to the now 7th episode. I'm joined by, right now, Miss Stadwick. In the future, Mrs. O'Keefe, maybe next year.
Yeah.
All right, would you mind kicking us off by flipping over the hourglass?
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, well, let's start off with a quick cheers.
All right,
there you
cheers.
go.
Thanks
Cheers.
for having me.
Of course. All right, so, of course, we'll eventually touch on how, you are the bride-to-be for next year, but I guess we have to start in the beginning. So how did we meet? What was kind of the first memory that you have? And then we'll build up from there.
Yes. So I know we chatted about this briefly, and I am having the hardest time remembering how we met, but I'll tell you, and then I need to hear your opinion.
It's kind of like we were just there, but...
Yeah. So I know we went to the same middle school, obviously, Brooks Middle School, and I know we met then at some point. I feel like we had band together, maybe.
Because you were also a woodwind instrument, right?
Right, I played the saxophone.
Okay.
So I feel like we had band together then, but I like picture you there, but I don't remember like meeting you. And I know we maybe even had a class together in Brooks, but I can't pinpoint it.
Yeah.
But I'll fast forward a little bit. I know the first time I met you as Jackie's boyfriend in high school.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking of. And Jackie had all her friends over, and then Mitch had like you guys over. And maybe you guys were just started dating. Maybe you weren't even officially dating yet, but she introduced you like as the guy she was interested
pretty early
in.
on, yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to meet you. And like I feel like we like our friend groups all knew each other pretty well, but that was the first like introduction to you. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, the formal, I think, you're right about that. I do recall like one of the first, I think one of the first pictures that I have, especially as we go like far back, is actually one where, because, I mean, it might have been Crease and I playing soccer, but there's pictures of like you with Rachel and Jackie at Lily Cash. But I don't remember exactly for what event.
Yeah.
But then I know the time that I'm thinking of when we like formally met was one time when like Creets and I went. I think Alonzo was actually there.
Yeah,
because we were playing soccer.
Creets was definitely there too, because that was kind of the first time I really met him. Because I at least had classes or band or something with you, but that was my first time like also meeting Creets. Like
just like indirectly. Is one thing. But I remember when when we were at Jackie's place, and that was, I think, obviously where a lot happened. Jackie's place was like the hangout spot. She had a lot of things going on there. But that's formally, that's why I can remember. But I know when we were talking with Jackie was like, I don't know either. Like, I feel like you guys have just always been there.
I know. Yeah, I feel like we just like appeared together. And the weird thing is too, because we didn't live in Bolingbrook anymore in high school, so it feels weird that I didn't even live there anymore, and that was my first time like officially meeting you.
Yeah. So. And then I guess to transition, you lived your childhood in Bolingbrook up until you went off from 8th grade to freshman year, right?
Yes, correct. It was like 2010, 2011, right between 8th grade and high school.
And then your parents are originally from Michigan?
Yep. My whole entire family is from Michigan, both my parents and like all their extended family. And then my parents moved to Chicago after college, and they lived there up until that point. So they lived in Chicago area until we moved in 2010 or 11.
But you made some good friends while you were in Bolingbrook.
Yes.
Yeah, you were hanging out at the infamous Purple Park. You want to tell us about the Purple Park?
Yeah, you unlocked a memory when you brought this up, because I haven't thought about the Purple Park in so long. And I feel like the Purple Park backstory, or going back, I guess, it was this park that was in the middle, just like a great meeting spot for all of our friends. Everyone probably lived like a 10-minute walk or even closer, and it was just like our meeting ground for everyone to meet. And I mean, looking back at middle school, it's some people, you have really like awkward stages and maybe you don't have the fondest memories of middle school, but I loved middle school. Like the friends we made, I mean, there are aspects I don't love about it, but like the friendships we made and like the Purple Park, it was so fun. And that's where like all of our friend groups kind of came together, because obviously Rachel and I had like our girlfriends, and then Nathan had like all his guy friends, and then I feel like we would just like all come together at the Purple Park and hang out, and it was so pure. Like we were just like hang out. I don't know what we were doing for hours on end at the Purple Park, and we're in middle school, and we would like play soccer or like just talk for hours and hours,
Yeah.
and like we'd talk about like our crushes or like what's going on in middle school, what's the drama, what's the gossip, and it was just like the best of times.
I should have done like a little trivia just to ask you if you know the actual name of the Purple Park.
Oh my gosh,
Like that would be.
do you know
I
it?
don't, but I
Uh, if
for
someone
for
said
next time,
it,
yeah. And so yeah, and then also just for context, you are one of three triplets. So
hmm
Nathan, of course, your brother just got married,
yes,
and then Rachel, also your sister,
yeah,
is now dating Cretes. So that's
yes, yeah,
um,
it's
the
crazy.
friend groups are all like,
They're all combined. Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful to have Rachel and Nathan. I guess specifically like Nathan in that aspect because it really combined all of our friend groups,
hmm
like the guys and the girls. And Nathan had such good guy friends. Granted, they were our friends too, but
hmm
that's how we met them. Like those guys were such great people, or are such great people, and we're still so close with all of them.
hmm
And I don't think if it wasn't for Nathan, we wouldn't have met all of them. So Nathan really kind of like brought those guys into our life, and
hmm
they're like all those friendships we made in middle school were just the best, and they
yeah,
still are.
yeah. I know. You mentioned, you like look back fondly on middle school. It's funny how some people will have like better memories than others, of course.
Yeah,
But yeah, coincidentally, Mitch, my brother-in-law, of course, he like looks back and he's like seventh grade, like that was like the best year ever. Like he
I
had so
mean, it
much fun in
was.
seventh
We had
grade.
like
Yeah.
such. I mean, our friend groups didn't really combine yet,
hmm
but I feel like it was probably pretty similar. Like we just had such great friends there. Like
Yeah.
we were so blessed with the best people we met at Brooks and like in the Bolingbrook area, and I I loved it. Even and we're gonna get to this too. Like when we moved from Bolingbrook to Michigan, it was so hard. Like
Yeah.
leaving those friends.
Yeah. So tell us about this. So you ended up moving before. I would imagine this is the summer, right,
hmm
of eighth grade. What was that
Yep.
like?
It felt like the end of the world, which sounds so dramatic, but I mean, we're, how old are you? I don't know,
You're like yeah
14,
yeah
13,
14 yeah.
14, like still pretty young, I guess. And it just felt like the end of the world, as you can tell from like our conversation. Like we had such good friends,
hmm
and it felt really scary moving to some place where we didn't know anyone besides family, but it's not like we're gonna,
The social
yeah,
roots
the
weren't the
social aspect of it. And I always remember this. Right when we were about to go away, the Woods surprised us with a going away party.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know if you were there. I know Jackie was obviously
hmm
there. You might have been there, but I don't think you were at that point. But they threw us the surprise going away party, and everyone just like sobbed. It was the
Oh,
first
yeah.
time I've ever seen my brother cry, and one of the only times I've seen him cry besides his wedding day.
Yeah. Big
And
shout out. Yeah.
yeah, and it like literally felt like the end of the world. I was so sad to leave everyone, and like specifically like Rachel, Nikki, and Jackie, and like we're such good friends.
hmm
I just couldn't imagine like finding,
Trying to start over.
yeah, like finding a new friend group. Um,
How long was it from when you found out that you guys were going to make the move until when it actually happened? Like, was there a big lead up period, or did you just suddenly
um,
find out this was happening?
I don't remember. I don't think it was super sudden. I feel like we probably knew for my parents would know. I don't remember.
It
It was
just
at
felt
least
like
like
it.
6 months, maybe a
Oh, okay.
year.
So it was a little bit longer.
It was a decent amount of time because I remember like thinking about it and trying to process,
hmm
and then all of a sudden we did move, and
You were able
it
to
was,
cherish those last moments.
yeah, and we did have like a lot leading up to it with like the going away party, and we obviously were lucky to finish the school year, and it was a really
hmm
good time to move because of like going from middle school to high school, and my parents did the best they could in that scenario, I
hmm
think. And it all worked out, but at the moment it felt like the end of the world.
hmm
And I'm so grateful we like kept up with all the friendships. That's like a blessing itself too.
hmm
But you never know when you're that young. It's like I don't know if I'm going to stay in their lives forever. And
Right.
like it was scary to think about losing those friendships. And
hmm
obviously, you all would go to high school together, specifically like Rachel and Jackie. And I
And
was,
form new bonds.
yeah, and I
Right.
was like kind of jealous. I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to be there.
Right.
Like
And this is
it,
always, or this is also before Snapchat, Instagram.
exactly.
Well, I
Yeah.
think it was like
We had
right
like
around it was starting.
Facebook,
Yeah,
maybe.
but it wasn't the same, right? It was
Yeah,
much harder to keep in touch and
exactly.
like stay up to date as to what people are doing because obviously,
Yeah.
for better or for worse, I think probably for better more so than anything,
hmm
but
Yeah.
you were more engaged with the people that you were around than
Yeah.
anything else. Whereas now I'm sure people that are able to, or people that have to move are able to kind of keep in
hmm
contact a little bit easier.
Yeah. We
Um,
could only like text even then, I don't. It's not like we had the smartphones we did now. Like
Right.
it
And you
wasn't
couldn't
as easy.
drive.
Yeah, we couldn't drive, so it was tricky in that aspect. But thankfully, I mean, fast forward, we moved to Michigan, and it was fine. But my
Hmm.
parents would arrange visits for us to come back to Bolingbrook, which was really great. So we like it was so nice that my parents would prioritize that and make sure it was usually every summer we would come back to Bolingbrook and like be able to see our friends still and like it was always like the best time to like come back and catch up with Rachel, Nikki, and
Hmm.
Jackie and like all our friends and
They prioritize that aspect of like
yeah,
still having that friendship.
yeah,
Not necessarily like obviously as close as if you guys were still here, but never like fully dwindle away. Like you were still
yeah.
able to see them. You said annually?
Yeah, I was at least once a year.
Okay.
I mean, my parents were great. They didn't have to do that, but thankfully they had their friends here, like my mom and um, Mrs. Wood are like best friends,
Hmm.
and she obviously knows Jackie's mom. And like my mom also had a really hard time, or both her parents had a really hard time like leaving their friends
Hmm.
too. So they thankfully like prioritized coming back and like seeing their friends, and they knew how much we
Hmm.
loved all the Bolingbrook people. So we would come back at least every summer, um, probably more times here and there. Sometimes the woods would meet us halfway and we'd go to like the dunes.
Oh, nice. Indiana.
Yeah, or
Hmm.
like we do things like that. And I forget, one year, it was towards like the end of high school, a few of our friends came out and visited us in Michigan. That was really
Hmm.
fun. I think
I think
Rachel, Jackie,
I
I
think
think
I was
Jackie,
dating. I think I was dating Jackie at that point, so it
yeah,
must have been later on. And
Rachel, Jackie, Miranda, and then some of the guys, I think.
hmm,
Like I think I forget. I want to say Devin came in
it's been
Sargon.
so long. We'll have to
Yeah.
like go back into the Facebook
I know.
archives.
I know I have the pictures that like
Right.
we all went to a homecoming together or something, which was so funny.
Yeah.
But anyways, thankfully we like still kept those friendships throughout
Hmm.
high school, which was so important and I don't think we would even maybe be here if we didn't.
Right.
So it was tricky, but I'm glad we kept our friendships throughout all those years.
And of course, where you moved to isn't super close. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like what, a 5 hour five
Five
hour
hour
drive.
drive
Hmm.
on a bad day, 6 hours. On a good day, 4.5.
Yeah, depending on the traffic
Yeah,
southbound to Chicago.
exactly. Yeah.
What was the difference from an environment standpoint when you compare obviously the middle school experience in Bolingbrook to where you went to high school in Michigan?
It was very different. It was very different. Bolingbrook, super diverse,
Hmm.
super welcoming, the best. And I'm not saying anything bad about Rochester, but now getting,
I have my little clip edit to
yeah.
promote Bolingbrook.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and then we moved to Rochester, Michigan. Again, we didn't have any friends there. We thankfully had like family. And I'm so, so, so thankful that I am a triplet and was able to like have
Hmm.
Rachel and Nathan
Like
in
built-in friends.
built-in friends and
Yeah.
have them like in our grade. I couldn't be more thankful for that because that made it really easy.
Hmm.
And I mean, everyone was pretty welcoming. It was very different than Bolingbrook. Rochester, at least the school we went to, isn't super diverse. So that was a big change. It's in a different income area too, I would
Hmm.
say. So that was an adjustment that I wouldn't think I would ever notice, but we definitely
Mm.
noticed. Um, and it was challenging, but there was also an aspect of it that we were the new kids at this school and we were triplets and people were, I think, I don't know if fascinated is the right
You
word,
guys
but
had like the star value.
people were interested. They were
Yeah.
like, oh, there's these three new children or kids at
Yeah.
school. They're triplets.
Like who would have predicted that
Yeah.
going into high school there would be like triplets that nobody knew? And
Yeah.
then obviously at that point, from their perspective, they have like their own friend groups, which
Mhm.
I mean, it does help that you're going into it going into freshman year, right? Because
Yes,
if you had
that was
gone into
super
it,
helpful.
yeah, if you were going into it in sophomore year, like that's a different
Mhm.
beast by itself because then everyone knows each other. At least you have the
Totally.
advantage of, um, yeah, that's a melting pot.
Yeah, it wasn't like
Period.
we weren't like super new, dropped off in the middle of the school year. Like
Right.
there were other new people there, of course, too, but it wasn't as big of a high school as Bolingbrook
Yeah.
High School.
What size was the graduating class?
Maybe like 400,
Okay. So
300, 400.
that's like a third, yeah, of Bolingbrook High
Exactly.
School.
Yeah. So people, I mean, you would know most.
That was probably like the size of Brooks Middle
I
School,
Yeah, I would
honestly.
compare
Yeah.
it to that exactly. Yeah, it was pretty similar size to
Okay.
Brooks Middle School. So that was a big difference too.
Hmm.
Like we at one point thought we were going to be going to Bolingbrook High School, and then we ended up going to this different high school, and the sizing was very different. But I would have preferred actually the smaller, the smaller high school compared to Bolingbrook High School
Yeah,
in that aspect.
yeah, and you probably heard some of the other stories about how
Yeah,
crazy it was.
yeah.
So yeah,
There's a blessing that we ended up going to um, Adams High School, and it's a great school. Don't get me
mhm,
wrong. It was like the education there, super great. It set us up for success. It was great. I also met like some of my best friends. Two of my friends from high school are like in my bridal party.
mhm.
Like I'm still really close with a lot of people from high school, so I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
trying
yeah.
to say anything negative.
Yeah, there's just
It
pros
was
and
a
cons.
great time in high school too. It's just very different than
Mhm.
my experience at in Bolingbrook.
And of course, you see things with like a rose tinted glasses,
Mhm.
right? Because the friends that you had made and were so close with in middle school are telling you about like all the good things and how much
Yeah.
fun they're, and you're kind of seeing it. It's like that meme of, I think it's Squidward looking at like Patrick and SpongeBob running
Like
around playing
having
around.
fun,
Yeah,
yeah.
and he's just looking from the window.
Totally.
Like you're just
Yeah.
obviously seeing the highlights,
Yeah.
but obviously everything's got its pros and cons. And you mentioned
Exactly.
from an educational aspect, your high school prepared you, and
Yes.
it actually prepared the three of you to go off to Michigan State.
Yes.
So Michigan State, of course, as I mentioned, is where you went, but it also has its prominence in the Stadwick family.
Sure
So
does.
you want to walk us through why MSU and its role in the family?
Yeah. So I am grateful we ended up going to like moving to Michigan almost for this like getting the opportunity to go to Michigan State because
Mm.
in-state tuition and all of that. So that was like a blessing in disguise. But
For sure.
backstory: both my grandparents went to Michigan State, met at Michigan State.
Both sets of grandparents?
No, sorry, my mom's
Okay.
my mom's mom and dad. They
Mhm.
met at Michigan State, and then my parents met at Michigan State. A lot of our family, like my mom's sisters or other family members, also went to Michigan State. So Michigan State it's
Yeah.
always been a huge part of our lives, and I've always felt like I wanted to go there,
Hmm.
and it's just been such like a fun part of our family and being Spartan fans.
Mhm.
So once we got to our senior year of high school, my parents never pushed it on us whatsoever. If anything, they were like, "Oh, there's these other schools that maybe are more affordable," or
Yeah.
or I
Especially
didn't
as triplets.
exactly, and I didn't know what I wanted to do whatsoever. So they were like, "Oh, you don't have to go to this Big Ten
Hmm.
school." Um, and I was really actually open to going many other places, but eventually we all did make our own decision. It made a lot of sense for Rachel to go to Michigan State because they have a really, really great teaching program. I think it's like the number one teaching program in the United States.
Oh,
Don't quote
wow.
me on that, but it's a really, really good school for teaching. And then I think Nathan decided to go there after Rachel, not because of Rachel, but I
Mhm.
think he came to that conclusion. And then I was actually toying to go to OSU with my friend Andrea.
Oh.
We loved OSU. We visited there
Oh, you
one time
visited,
with
yeah.
a friend, and like had so much fun. And we thought we were going to go there for a second, but then my friend Andrea, she got into Michigan, which is Michigan State's rival school,
Mhm.
and I didn't. I would never.
That was just already crossed off the list.
I maybe
Yeah.
wouldn't even get into Michigan, but that was never an option for me. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to OSU without my good friend. Like, I'm not going to go there by
Mm.
myself. So then I was like, oh, where do I go? Where do I go? And then I was like, well, I mean, I don't remember my thought process, but I'm sure
You kind of like tricked yourself into going.
yeah,
To
I'm sure I would never admit it then that, oh, my brother and sister are going there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm also going to go there. But I think that probably did
Yeah.
play a big aspect into it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So we all ended up going to Michigan State. We all graduated different years, though, which is kind
Oh,
of.
really?
Yeah, Nathan graduated in 3 years. I graduated in the normal 4. Rachel technically graduated in the 4, but she did an extra year.
Oh, right.
The teaching program is 5 years. So we all kind of left Michigan State different years, but our time at Michigan State, oh my gosh, it was the time of our lives. Like I loved having Nathan and Rachel there. It was just the best of times, and I know my parents were probably so happy that we were both there, or we were all there.
Makes it
and
easier, especially
yeah,
to visit the three of you.
exactly. It was
Mhm.
we did them a favor for sure, and they love Michigan State, so they loved
Mhm.
visiting. And It was like the best of times. And Rachel and I, like, we all had our different friend groups, but we all would like get together and go to parties together
Hmm.
and whatnot. And we all had like different things going on, but we always would see each other still. And it was just so fun. It was the time
Yeah.
of our lives.
And you're able to support each other, especially like
Yeah,
as you're um, it may be feeling homesick even. Although it's not like you
exactly.
were that far from home, right?
No, we were only an hour and a half away from home,
Hmm.
so not super far, but I'm one, like, I love my family, so I would
Hmm.
have had a hard time if it was just like me in a
Yeah.
school and I didn't know anyone. And the other thing is too, Michigan State, going to high school in Michigan, like so many of our friends also went to Michigan
Oh, I
State. So
bet.
that was also super fun. Like a lot of my high school friends went to Michigan State.
Hmm.
So it was like the best time.
Yeah, yeah. And then you mentioned that you went to Michigan State undecided.
Yes.
What was the decision process for you to like figure out what you wanted to graduate in?
Oh gosh, it was a journey, Danny. It was a journey.
This is like a contemplative, like find yourself
Yeah,
experience.
I don't even know. I probably went through every avenue my freshman year. I don't know what I even was doing. I was taking all the gen ed classes, but I don't even remember what I was thinking about doing. I have no idea what I was thinking about doing. At one point, I really liked like anthropology. I took
Oh,
a really
really?
cool anthropology class, loved that. But I quickly ruled out like anything that has to do with science or math. So I was like, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
And then I think I had to take an English or some sort of writing class. Um, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I've always known I really liked writing. So I would meet with my advisor far too many times trying to figure out like what I
Mm,
want to do. And I would go to him, or I don't even remember, it was a him or her. I think it was a him. Um, every single time I was like, well, I really like working with people and I really like writing. So those were like my two like
strong suits
strong
or also
suits. Like,
interests?
yeah, exactly, interests. So eventually he kind of guided me into communications, and I
Mm,
started taking communications classes, and I really, really loved those. And it was
mhm.
just a lot of writing. I did some PR classes because I minored in public relations, so I ended up just doing a bunch of like writing pretty much, and
Mhm.
I loved every minute of it. So that kind of it kind of like fell into my lap, I guess.
Yeah. And this is something, the only reason I asked too is because I have a lot of younger cousins and they're kind of going through this, like, essentially they just have to discern what is it that I want to do, and then ultimately,
Hmm.
like, what's the purpose of the university? Like, should it be catering to the students so that they get a job, or is it, like,
Yeah.
that's what's really tricky.
Oh,
Because,
so
of
tricky.
course, everyone wants to have, the ideally, like, you graduate and you kind of go into the pipeline of like
Hmm.
a job, but obviously, it doesn't always pan out that way. And I
Yeah.
do think that there is a role of the university of just taking a more like liberal arts approach of just saying,
Hmm.
we're gonna educate in culture and like how to enjoy leisure or like history stuff like
Hmm.
that. Anthropology, of course, is
Yes.
a big one. But there is also like the realistic side of like, okay, well, at the end of
Yeah,
the
if
day,
you
like
need
you
to
need
get a
to pay the
job.
bills. Yeah,
Yeah,
you need.
yeah. I was struggling with that a little bit. I was like, I need to find something that will get me a job.
Yeah, right. And then I guess just as a quick segue, like I'm
Mhm.
curious to hear. So ultimately, yeah, you did enter a field that is very writing focused and
Mhm.
does require a lot of um, yeah, knowledge about English and language and communication styles and things like that.
Yep.
What has been your experience with AI tools as they've entered the workplace? Have you found
Yeah.
that to be complementary, or is it something that you're still struggling, like in terms of wrestling with?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it's been really coming up, I'd say, in like the last year. I honestly didn't work too much with AI until like this past year
I don't
or
think
so.
anyone did.
That's true. That's
Yeah,
fair. Yeah.
it's been so quick.
Yeah, it like I feel like it just took off all of a sudden, and I feel like a lot of companies too didn't embrace it at first, but
Hmm.
now more are, and I see that in my current company.
Hmm.
As far as writing and communications, I actually really enjoy it. I think some people think it could take away like the need for someone who is a writer because, oh, you could type into chat gpt, write me this press release.
Hmm.
um, and that I do that in my
I've
job.
never used it. So do you only say like write me this press release and then but like do you have to provide some additional
Yeah,
details?
yeah,
Yeah,
you'd have to say, write me this press release about Chicago's
like weather or
weather.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like
Like you
upcoming
try
weather.
to
Yeah.
like guide it, I guess, to give it
Hmm.
what you want.
And you can
But to,
refine it.
I mean, probably I don't use it in that
Okay.
way. But I think that kind of says a lot too that like if you can give the tool all these like background information to try to get it to what you want it to do,
Like
but
inputs, essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I would never, for example, if I tried to use that press release, like it wouldn't give me exactly what I needed. At
Sure.
least I haven't found that. So if anything, I use it to kind of like help me out, like maybe brainstorming or with like a
Mm-hmm.
creative. If I have to create like a social media campaign, which I don't do super often, um, it kind of helps me with like I feel like I'm not like super creative with coming up with a bunch of different versions of things. So I use it maybe in that way.
Hmm.
Um,
So it's complementary in the
yeah,
sense that it provides maybe like a different vantage point.
mhm,
Okay, that's
yeah,
nice. Yeah, I'm curious about that because of course it is something that a lot of people are in some ways like fascinated with because it's
yeah,
such a novel technology in the sense that like a calculator is fixed in terms of its output based on the inputs,
mhm,
but obviously like ChatGPT and other AI tools, like you can get something unpredictable, right? Like you
mhm.
just give
Oh
it
yeah,
something and then you don't know where it's going to take you.
yeah,
And people are starting to mess around with, of course, writing prompts, but also
mhm,
arts, whether it's creating music or
yeah.
visual design, stuff like that. Like there's a lot that I think people are starting to explore and realize that they can kind of use it.
Yeah, I feel like I could dive deeper into it. Like I would need to learn more how to use the tool
Mhm.
better, but it's not something people are teaching, at least in my experience. It's kind of just been me playing around with it, but I'm
Mhm.
also a little scared of it. So
I think
I'm
we all
like,
are.
yeah, so I'm just,
Yeah, I
yeah.
haven't even, I guess for context, like I haven't even used any sort of AI tools, or at least I
Okay.
should say I haven't willingly used any
Yeah.
AI tools. I think on Instagram, they kind of like trick you if you
Yeah, if you
try and
start
search
searching,
something,
yeah, that's
all
new.
of a sudden you're like having a conversation with Meta AI. I
Yeah.
need to talk to Dalton about that. But
Yeah.
anyway, as we circle back to of course you went through your journey at MSU and
Mhm,
then you ended up graduating from there, of course, you had your friends that were in Michigan,
mhm.
and it's not like Chicago is like right around the corner. I mean, it's still relatively close in terms of big cities, but
Yep.
I could imagine that there's also a draw maybe to like the East Coast or something like that.
Mhm.
What drew you back to Chicago?
Yeah, many reasons. When I was doing my job search, I was really open to, I tried to be really open to many places. I really wanted a job.
Yeah,
I
understandable.
was looking a lot in Michigan, but very open to like everywhere in Michigan. Um, but I wasn't finding a lot of things. And then I expanded my search to Chicago because I was like, oh, I love Chicago. I would love to live there. Obviously, we know people in Chicago, especially like in the suburbs. I feel like we had some friends here and there in the city. Um, and I also had my good friend Sydney. She was going to law school in Chicago. So I knew people would be in Chicago.
Okay, nice.
And I just found so many more job opportunities in Chicago. So I was like, I almost immediately just switched my job search to Chicago because I was like, that's where I'm finding that I'm getting
More hits.
more hits, yeah,
Hmm.
more opportunities, more things I'm liking. So I just interviewed around really, and then I feel like I got lucky and found a job I really liked, um, and got an offer. And then I was like, well, I'm moving to Chicago after graduation. So it felt really easy. I was like, oh, and I wasn't nervous. I was like, oh, I'm excited to move to the city.
Nice.
So I was super excited, and I knew I would have a community here.
Yeah.
So that was comforting, and families close by too.
Yeah, and your brother, you mentioned graduated before you, but he
Hmm.
stayed in
Yep, he was
Michigan.
still in Michigan.
Mhm.
Yep, he loves being in Michigan. So,
Whereas you graduated before Rachel,
yep,
and so you were technically the first one to like make that decision to come to Chicago,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's true. Yep,
You ended up, making that decision and saying like, okay, moving
yeah.
to the city, um, and yeah, you ended up, where you were in terms of, the opportunity where it led you.
Hmm.
Now, do you see yourself like, let's say, like if we were to zoom out, what is it that grounds you either in Chicago or maybe somewhere else? Like, do you see Chicago being like the forever home, or are you interested in other places?
Yeah, I know we talked about this before too, and I feel like I change my mind all the time.
And I'm not going to
Um,
hold you to this.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
even
of
though it's
course.
recorded, of
I
course.
know.
Yeah. If you do
You're gonna
decide to do
show me
something,
this
yeah,
clip.
I'm going to send it to you and say, what's going
Yeah.
on here?
No, I don't know. I go back and forth. I love living here. I've also only lived downtown Chicago since moving here in 2019, so that's kind of all I know. So I think my next steps, or our next steps with Pat,
Hmm.
would be moving maybe to a place like Brooker Park or somewhere that's not so hustle and bustle
Hmm.
downtown. I feel like that's like immediate, maybe next steps, and staying in the Chicago area at the very least. Next steps then would maybe be like moving to the suburbs.
Mm.
I know Pat would love to move to the suburbs. He's ready to get out of the city, so that could be in our future. I'm also not opposed to leaving Chicago eventually, which could be hard, but having all my family in Michigan, and eventually, if we're blessed to have children, like being close to my parents would be really
Hmm.
important. So that would maybe like bring me back to Michigan, but I'm pretty open, I would say. Right now, it's kind of Patrick's job. That's well, he would probably say that like I really like living here, and
But they're both true.
yeah. So I don't know. We talk about it a lot. And right now we're just like happy and
Sure.
comfortable and
Yeah.
young and fun and living in the
Right.
city. So I don't know. But if anything, I know we'll probably stay in like Chicago area or Michigan. I don't see us moving to like a random state.
Yeah. In the immediate future, at the very least.
Yeah, yeah. At least like probably like next 5 to 10 years, we're gonna be here or in Michigan.
Hmm. And you did say, of course, that family is really important to you,
Mhm.
and they're all, at the very least, in the Midwest area, right?
Exactly.
Whether
Yeah.
it's obviously primarily in Michigan, but also you have some connections here.
Yeah.
Obviously, Rachel's here, so
Yeah, that would be the hard part too, like leaving Rachel. If we
mhm.
ever
Unless
like
you snag her to come with too, yeah,
I know. So we'll see. We'll see.
yeah. But yeah, I mean that's I think something that especially as we start getting a little bit older is having a little bit more of an appreciation for like a calmer lifestyle.
Hmm.
Obviously,
Yeah.
you've been in the high rises since you've got since you've arrived in Chicago, and
Yes.
you did experience the COVID years, which are a little bit of an anomaly. But now it's it's back to like full force, right?
Yeah.
Everything is
Oh
hustle and
yeah.
bustle where you are now. But yeah, it'd be
Absolutely.
interesting to see. Yeah, ultimately like the next step, and I
Yeah.
think this kind of segues perfectly into talking about Pat. I
And we
know.
kind of skipped over it with college, so I'm glad you brought us back.
Yeah, yeah. We could have the whole episode without Pat because you're interesting enough, but
Thank you.
we
Thank
we
you.
do have to loop in Pat here
Yeah.
because of course you two are getting married next year, so
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, how did you two meet, and what was the origin story for
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So we're actually coming up on our 1 year of engagement. June 24th is our 1 year of
Congratulations.
engagement. So very exciting. And we're getting married in May of 2025. So long engagement. But going back to my sophomore year, his junior year, he obviously went to Michigan State
Hmm.
and he was my neighbor. So we lived across the street from each other. I don't know if you've ever really
I don't think
heard
I
this
have, no.
story. And I'm probably the worst to tell this. Pat and my sister tell it really well. But long story short, Rachel knew one of his roommates, and we just moved into our apartment across the street from Patrick's apartment.
Okay.
And it was a few weeks before school started. We weren't doing anything. We weren't working. We were just like partying
Just
before
relaxing
school
and
started.
just
Yeah,
enjoying life. Yeah.
exactly. It was like the best time. And Rachel was up there for the whole summer, I think, or maybe she was up there a few weeks. I don't know. She was up there before I was, and she like met some people, and essentially met she met one of Patrick's roommates, and
Hmm.
he invited Rachel to a party. So Rachel's like, "You have to go to this party with me," and I was
Hmm.
like, "Well, yeah, I have nothing better to
Yeah,
do."
I do have to do
Yeah,
this.
so
Yeah.
I of course went to this party. So we get to this party literally across the street from us. We lived in Cedar Village, which wouldn't
For
be
those who
anything.
know.
For those who know,
Yeah.
it's like this off campus, but almost it's pretty much on campus of Michigan State, but it's off campus, and it's just like these little buildings, and they're known for like having parties. And if we ever like Michigan State ever wins like a championship or a really big
Mm.
game, like people are burning couches in the street. It gets really crazy in Cedar Village. My parents actually lived in Cedar Village at one point, which is kind of fun. Nathan lived in Cedar Village as well, so we all lived there.
You have some family legacy, let's
Yeah,
say.
family legacy, exactly. So, anyways, we go to this party, and Rachel obviously knows one of his Pat's roommates, and she like leaves to go talk to, or no, I think she introduced me to Pat, and he had 3 roommates. So she introduced me to Pat and then one of his other roommates, and they're both these tall, blonde, pale,
Irish.
Irish
Yeah.
guys. So Rachel introduces me. She probably said something along the lines of, "Oh, this is my twin sister Natalie," or like my sister Natalie, or sometimes we say like twin if Nathan's not there. Sorry, Nathan.
It's just
It's just
easier.
easier, so you
Yeah.
don't get the questions. So she probably said something along those lines. So then Pat or the other roommate, I forget who said it. They're like, "Oh, this is my twin," or let's say it was Pat. I don't remember. Pat goes, "Oh, this is my twin Tabor." And I was
Mm.
like, okay, this is sweet. Like we met these twins. Like
Yeah.
that's great. And
And
we,
they look alike.
yes, they look like, and we immediately hit it off. I spent the whole night with them. They were so fun. I immediately thought like Pat was the cute, nothing against the other guy. I just like was really drawn to Pat. And I spent the whole night with them. We have like all these pictures with them because we were like taking these twin pictures because we were so excited that we met these other twins. So we party with them all night, like had the best time. I get one of us gets each other's number.
Hmm.
I think I gave Pat my number, vice versa. Um, and then we see them all the time because they live across the street from us, and we
Hmm.
probably go to a few other parties together. And I'm really starting to like Pat, and eventually, like we've definitely hung out a few times at this point. We've hung out a few times. Um, and then eventually he like asked me on a real date. But before this, he like tells me he has to tell me something. And I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, what do you have to tell me?" And then he comes clean that he's not actually a twin, as you know.
Yeah, but you also have a little ace in your sleeve where you're like,
Yeah.
well, I'm also not
I'm
technically a
yeah,
twin.
yeah, but I wasn't hiding anything.
Yeah.
But essentially, how he explains it is Tabor, his friend slash roommate, they had this pact if they ever met twin girls, they were going to pretend they were twins. And
That's
Rachel and I happened to be their next victim.
hilarious. Yeah.
So our relationship started on a lie, pretty much. But he came clean.
There's only up from there.
Yeah, yeah, it's only up, and they were so fun, and it was so fun like hanging out with all his roommates. And eventually Pat took me on a date, and he showed up to my door, and I could tell he was like so nervous. He was like shaking coming to get we were just going to like a pancake shop down the street. But he took me out on our first date.
That's sweet,
And
yeah.
yeah, the rest was history. And we spent a ton of time together because we were neighbors. And
Mhm.
we always hung out with like his friends. He met all my friends. And then yeah, the rest was pretty much history. We were together throughout college and stuck together. And then he graduated. He was a year older, but he graduated like a semester late technically. So it was only, I think, like a semester where we weren't in school together. And then he ended up getting a job in Chicago, and then we both moved to Chicago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Ended up working out.
Yeah, it just kind of like worked out. I think he maybe moved to Chicago for me, but I don't know if he would admit that.
We'll put him on the hot seat.
Yeah,
We'll see what he
you'll have
says.
you'll have to get his side of the story.
Yeah.
That's how I remember everything, and it's been so many years now. We're gonna be celebrating our 8-year
Isn't that
anniversary,
crazy?
which is super crazy. So
It's
8 years.
yeah, especially as you think back to how long it's been since
Mhm.
yeah, you first got into college.
Yeah,
And it's easy to think, at least for me, I'm like, oh yeah, like that was just a few years ago that I was in college, but like it
it's been
wasn't.
5 years
Yeah,
for me.
especially as you think back to obviously COVID, like I feel like that kind of just meshed together 2 years,
Oh
maybe
yeah,
more. That it's easy for me to think back and be like, oh yeah, like I was just there and
it's
I
been a
wasn't. Like it's
while.
been like a decade since, yeah, since I first became a freshman,
Yep,
and it'll be like 9 years since you first became a freshman,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
So
you're about to hit your 10-year, like college, not college, high school.
yeah,
Like you
the
could have your 10-year high school reunion.
the high school reunion, which is on the books. Yeah, so
Wait, I'm gonna come.
yeah, I don't have what is it, Facebook,
Oh yeah.
but Sydney Banks actually is in the group, and they are saying some crazy things
Oh
in
my
there. Yeah,
gosh.
so I'm gonna
Wait, I'm
have
gonna
to.
come.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more the merrier
Yeah.
because it's already like a huge. I think Creets will probably.
Yeah.
I think he's like, I'm not gonna miss that, but yeah, we'll.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if Creets brings Rachel, then you have
Right,
to
I
go.
just
Yeah,
have to be there.
yeah, you just have to be there. And obviously Jackie would come with. But
Right. How funny.
yeah,
It's crazy though.
yeah, it's been so long. Time flies, of
Mhm.
course, as you like reflect back on this. But yeah, yeah, you guys ended up moving into Chicago together,
Mhm.
and this was, what is this, like 2019?
2019. Yeah.
So this is right before COVID.
Yes. Yeah. It was right before COVID because the crazy thing is we like so we didn't move in together immediately when we moved to Chicago. I moved in with another girl, and then he lived with some roommates. So we had
Oh,
like a
really? Okay.
year apart, which I think was like a probably a good thing. We didn't move in
Mhm.
like immediately together. Um, and then our like the following year, 2020, our leases were up, and we made the decision we were going to move in together. And then COVID happened, and I can never remember the timing. It either COVID was like we just went into
Mm.
lockdown and then we signed our lease, I want to say, or we signed our lease right before the lockdown. I
This is
can't
right around
remember.
March, right?
Yeah. So, and we moved in together, I think, in like at the end of April of 2020.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we either just signed a lease or already signed a lease, and then COVID happened, and we never would have expected it to be what it was. We
Yeah.
signed a lease for this tiny one bedroom, and we moved in together, and it was just like COVID. We were like moved in together. We had our gloves on, we had our masks on. It was like terrifying. We didn't hire anyone. We were like scared we were gonna catch COVID just moving into our apartment. It
Was
was,
it just you two? Imagine, like, did Crete and Rachel help out as well, or
I
like Pat
think
have
it
any
was
other friends?
just, I don't remember. I think it was just us, or maybe Creets and Rachel were there. They either helped us out or helped us move out or helped us move in. I forget.
Hmm.
But I want to say it was just us.
Yeah, there was definitely no hiring.
Yeah,
Like,
there.
yeah,
Yeah, it was. And
you're on your
regardless, it
own.
was just the two of us, or maybe the four of us. It was scary. So we moved in together, and it was tricky. Not the relationship aspect of it, just the world
Changed. Yeah,
change. Yeah, the
went
scenario we
upside
were
down.
in. Yeah, it was just crazy. We would never have signed a lease for this tiny one bedroom. We would have gotten a bigger place if we could. We never would have expected for both of us to be working from home for so long. We
Mm-hmm.
both like got moved to completely remote. We were both really going through it with our jobs. My entire team was laid off, and it was just really stressful, and the world just what was going on in the world was really stressful. It was a tough time just because of that.
Hmm.
And I'm really thankful we had each other, but it was, I think that put a strain on our relationship just a little bit, just because I think our mental health was struggling
Mm.
mostly just because of everything that was going on.
And
So
you're in such tight quarters, like you
yeah,
said.
it
Like, it's
was
really hard
crazy.
to be able to, not necessarily that you need like distance or anything like that, but you also do need to a certain extent like some solitude to just like be
Hmm.
in your own thoughts and like relax.
Yeah,
And I imagine that was probably like pretty difficult at that
yeah.
time.
Oh, it was so tough. Even just like having to try to work in a one bedroom apartment, both of us, like he would be on calls in the living room, and then
Hmm.
I'd be on calls in the tiny bedroom, and we could hear each other, and it was really tough, but we made it through.
Yeah, yeah. Now that you mentioned, I do recall when you guys made that transition, but it's
Yeah,
been so long that
I know.
it's easy to kind of skip over that to where you guys were just already there.
I know. I kind of like black it out a little bit. It was a
Yeah.
tough time, and thankfully Jackie and Rachel lived down the street too, so
Hmm.
that was really helpful because we kind of had each other. And I think Jackie talked about this a little bit, or maybe someone talked about it. But it was just us like hanging
Yeah,
out. It
Jackie
was
did mention it.
just
Hmm.
Creeds, sometimes Rachel, Jackie, me, and Pat.
Hmm.
That's who we were, and you were there sometimes.
Yeah,
That's all we were doing, just
board
hanging out.
games and
Yeah.
just relaxing indoors because obviously you couldn't do much at
No,
that time. And
it
you,
was.
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say it was like fun, but it was just us hanging out.
Yeah, it's funny too because you guys were, like I said, high rise, right? Like you guys were in what should be the thick of it,
Mm-hmm.
but at that time there were so many deals and people were moving out, obviously
Yeah.
like going back to the suburbs. You actually signed like before I think any of the COVID deals
Mm-hmm.
hit the market because I
Yep.
think that was a big reason why like Jackie and Rachel were able to get like such a good deal on where they
Exactly.
moved in.
Yeah, because they moved in later that summer, I
Hmm.
think. Yeah, and
And
we were in there before the summer.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. And now, I mean, I don't remember the specifics. I'd be curious to ask, like Jackie or Rachel when I have her on, like
Mm-hmm.
what they paid monthly. But I know it was recent. It was probably like maybe half a year ago now that I somehow came up on looking up what the rent was for the unit that they were in, and it
Oh
was like
yeah.
$1,000 increase or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's, I mean, obviously it's just what
Yep.
1, 2 years since they had moved out.
Oh yeah.
But or maybe yeah, like 2 or 3. But still, there was such a good deal going on at that time. I think now if you tell people like what people were paying in that area right
Yeah.
after COVID, I mean, it's night and day.
Oh yeah, even so, like you said, we moved into that one apartment before the COVID deals, and then we ended up moving into our current apartment, like that following year, and there's still the COVID deals going on,
Oh, nice.
and we've been in this apartment now for almost 4 years. I want to 3 or 4
Really?
years. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's longer than I expected, but we got a good deal on it. Like we pay less in this apartment than we did for that tiny
Wow.
that tiny apartment we first moved into because I mean, we
Yeah.
kind of got lucky.
With a
So
balcony too.
yeah, and
Hmm.
I mean, we love where we live now. It's just, and we pay less for it. So
Hmm.
there was definitely that. We kind of missed out on that COVID deal. We should have like held. I don't know. It was just crazy
Yeah,
times.
you
It was
couldn't
crazy. We
predict.
never would have guessed what it was.
Right. But I think another unpredictable aspect, and remind me if this was before or after you met Pat, you mentioned that you had discovered that there was a mass on your liver.
Yes.
So was this before meeting Pat, after, and what was it like kind of coming to the realization that this was something that you all of a sudden had to
Yeah.
wrestle with? Because I imagine it would be like nerve-wracking, scary.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a crazy time. It was after I met Pat. It was my going into my junior year of college.
Mm.
So I've known Pat probably for a year or so at this point. But it's kind of a long story, but essentially, the summer of going into my junior year of college, I had an internship in Detroit, which probably doesn't make sense to the story, but it all ties in together. So,
Geographic positioning,
yeah,
yeah.
I moved to Detroit for the summer and interned at General Motors. Super excited. I lived with three other roommates, and I was going into work every single day, but I was having these like terrible stomach issues. I would eat my breakfast every single morning, go on to work, and then I would be getting sick at work, and it was absolutely horrible. And I
Mm.
was just mortified because I really wanted to like. This was my first big girl job. I wanted to
Mm.
do so good, and I had to go home some days because I just couldn't make it through the day because I
Oh,
was
wow.
getting so sick. So I probably cried to my mom a million times. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying everything. I can't eat anything.
Was it a sort of sharp pain, or you couldn't keep anything down,
No,
or both?
it was I wasn't having any sharp pains at this moment. I just couldn't keep anything down. I
Mm.
Nothing was agreeing with me like severely.
Wow.
So eventually I go see a doctor and he prescribes all these tests for me. And I always remember this. So it's probably been a few weeks at this point. And in this time too, he told me to do an elimination diet because he's like, you could be allergic to something. So I went vegan, I went gluten free, I wasn't eating anything pretty much. I
Just
wasn't,
eating air.
yeah, I was barely eating, which is not great. So at this point, I must have made it through the summer, and now I'm back at school because I had this ultrasound done at Michigan State at a hospital nearby, and I always remember it. I'm in this hospital room getting the ultrasound done, and then the tech kept going over one part of my stomach, and she was really pushing on it, and I was like, "This is kind of weird." She keeps going over this one spot, and it was kind of painful. So I asked her, I was like, "What's going on?" And
Mm.
she can't tell me anything because you're not allowed to, I don't think.
Mm.
But at that moment, I knew something was wrong or they
Mm.
found something. So it probably was less than a day or a few. I don't know. It was maybe the next day. I don't know. A doctor called me and said that they found something on my liver, and that was absolutely terrifying. Hearing that as like a young woman that they
Mhm.
found something. Just that is what they said. And they said they found a mass in my liver. So immediately I'm like, I have cancer.
Yeah.
I was terrified. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to be healthy. Like,
yeah.
this is essentially like your peak health, right? And then you
Yeah.
come to find out that there's something that's you're not aware of in your body,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, it was just absolutely terrifying. So they end up having me do an MRI, I think really in the next few days. They were pretty quick about it. Um, so I get an MRI done and they send the imaging back to my doctor. I had this really good doctor in Rochester. I was seeing a whole bunch of
Mhm.
doctors because I was having these stomach issues too.
That's separate from the liver?
So now at this point, I think I know that I forget the timeline's kind of messed up in my head, but I did the elimination diet um, while I was getting all these tests done,
Mm.
and you had to do the elimination diet, I think, for like 4 to 6 weeks or something. And I slowly started integrating different foods back into my diet. Like cheese was fine, meat was fine, everything was fine. But with gluten, you have to be completely gluten free for like 3 to 4 weeks, I think, for it to completely clear out of your system. And then you can introduce it back into your system and see how you react. So I did that and reacted terribly,
Mm.
absolutely terrible. And I mean, that just immediately showed that I am most likely allergic to gluten. And I went back to my doctor. So this must have been before the MRI. And it was all like really in a few weeks of each other at least. But we kind of came to the conclusion that I'm probably allergic to gluten and it runs in my family, celiac disease. I've never been officially tested for celiac disease though, but I feel like I have it. But that's a whole different story.
And when you tested, was it inflammation, or you just couldn't retain any of the food when you reintroduced it?
Yeah, it just I got sick.
Hmm.
It wasn't it.
Wasn't settling.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
nuts. I won't go into the
Sure.
details, but
You knew pretty apparently,
yeah,
like
it was
the
very
gluten.
clear I
Okay.
could not eat gluten. And then after that, I just cut gluten out of my diet and completely fixed the issue. I didn't have any stomach problems whatsoever after fixing that, unless I've accidentally eaten gluten. So that kind of like solved the gluten issue, and I realized I was allergic to gluten.
Hmm.
But because I was having these stomach issues, and it, it just was such a coincidence that it led me to having these tests done. Because I also had like a few other stomach tests done, and they were all coming back fine.
Hmm.
They did like some sort of, I had to like drink something, and they looked at how the drink went in me. I don't even
Hmm.
know. I did a few other things and
They
everything was
track it.
fine.
Yeah,
So
they did.
they just kept testing me for things, and then that's how I ended up with the ultrasound, and they just coincidentally found this mass on my
Wow.
liver. So it's honestly a blessing the way it all
Yeah.
happened, and I can't even explain it. How I'm just happy I continued the testing and didn't dismiss any of my health
Hmm.
issues. Because I mean, I just kind of I knew something was wrong, but I solved the gluten issue. Anyway, so then I have this MRI done,
Hmm.
and then my doctor in Rochester calls me and said that they found um, a mass the size of a softball or grapefruit, like a 15 centimeter size mass, probably this big,
That's huge.
very large on my liver. So I immediately lost it. Especially knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have freaked out as much as I did. But I mean,
You can't blame yourself for
yeah,
that. Yeah.
I had no idea what it was. I just thought it was like a big tumor, and it technically was. And
Hmm.
I just spiraled. It was terrifying.
I'm sure.
So he referred me to a liver specialist, and my mom thankfully went with me because I was just a mess. I was freaking out, and this happened pretty fast at this point because it was so large. They were concerned. Um, so I saw a liver specialist. He looked at all my imaging, and essentially this mass came from being on birth control. And I'm not a doctor,
Mm.
so no one quote me on any of this, but this is what I was told. It's also been many, many years, so I might not remember all this correctly.
Hmm.
But it's very rare for younger women to be diagnosed with this. But these masses on your liver, sometimes if you're on birth control for a really, really long time, it can mess with your hormones, and then you can get what they're called adenomas. So I had this very large adenoma on my liver, probably caused by birth control. Um, so the liver specialist diagnosed me with that, and he said I had to remove it because it's so big it could rupture. And it's basically like this big thing of like blood vessels, so it can definitely like rupture. It's not just like a hard mass. So I was absolutely terrified too. I was like, can I just like I was he kind of not he just warned me like if I got in a car accident, it could rupture. I couldn't go on roller coasters. I don't know why I would, but he's like, you can't do anything.
Don't get into any duels or
Yeah, like make
skirmishes.
sure no one punches you in the stomach, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. He didn't want it to rupture. So A few weeks later, it was November of 2018, I had a surgery to remove it. Um, the surgery went pretty well. They tested it to make sure it wasn't cancerous, and really, thankfully, it was not.
Mm.
Um, so, and I saw a picture of it after they took it out, and
Your
it was a big,
your
it was
arch
a yeah, it
nemesis.
was a big guy.
Yeah.
It was bigger. I mean, they told me how big it was, but it was big. I can't believe it was like on my liver for who knows how long it was there. But I'm just thankful we found it in the weird way we found it. I was able to
Wow.
get it removed. I still have like a few smaller ones, small adenomas, which is common. Some
Mm.
people can have like many. Some people can have their whole liver like filled, not filled, but covered by adenomas. Um, it's more common than you would think, actually. Some women might have them and they could be really small. I have two or three of them that are like 2 centimeters or 3 centimeters, so very small. And I would probably never know that I had those.
Mm.
And I only know it because I had the surgery. So they usually don't cause many symptoms unless they're the size of a softball.
That was my next question. So in terms of if the impact to the liver,
Mhm.
it's more dependent on the size, or like does it impair like the process speed of like the
Yeah,
liver does?
I'm sure it impacts the liver in some way. Um,
We'll have to go to WebMD just to
yeah,
check. Yeah,
I know. And it's been so many years I've really talked deeply to specialists about it.
sure.
Um, they're really more of an issue when they're big and growing. I have to get an MRI every year to make sure they're not growing because that could happen.
Hmm.
Thankfully, they've been fine every year, and if they were to grow, I just get them removed. But yeah, it was a whole fiasco. And one thing I learned is your health is not
It's
guaranteed.
like happens like that.
Yeah, it was really scary. It was scary,
Hmm.
but I learned a lot, and my family was great. Everyone was really supportive. Pat was amazing. He was
Hmm.
always there to like support me. I leading up to the surgery, I was really nervous and anxious, and he
I
was
bet.
really supportive. He came and visited me when I had the surgery, so that was really nice. So
Hmm.
it was a crazy time.
Yeah. Do you feel like that also maybe helped bring you two a little bit closer in a sense, like because you had that shared experience?
Yeah, I think so. I totally think so. I mean, me especially, it sounds crazy, but it really impacted me. And like my family was amazing. Patrick was
Hmm.
amazing. And I look at them all differently in the best way now. It just, it sounds weird, but
No, I, don't thi-
like
I think it's anything but crazy. Yeah.
they took really good care of me. So
Hmm.
it made my relationship with all of them better. Like
Yeah.
my mom, I could cry talking about her. She was amazing.
Yeah.
And
And
so
you
was Rachel.
Yeah, and you definitely learn to appreciate those, yeah, that deeper connection that where you ultimately you
Hmm.
realize like they're really there for you no matter what,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess from your perspective, you said that it really impacted you.
Mhm.
Are you saying impacted you specifically in the way that you view the world, or is it just like the relationships that you have that you already mentioned?
I would say both. The main thing is I learned that like your health is not guaranteed. You
Hmm.
could be the healthiest person, not, I
Or
mean,
seem to be.
seem to
Hmm.
be exactly. Like I like to think I'm pretty active. I ate decent. Like you think you're doing all the right things, and this was just something I probably could have never avoided. Maybe I don't know,
Who
but
thinks about that,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Like I would never thought that. I don't know. I don't know. It just it happened to me. You're
Hmm.
and I just realized that my health isn't guaranteed, and it could have turned out worse. I mean, you just never know, and I feel like life is short.
Yeah, life is
You
short,
know?
and it is a blessing to be able to be here, and at
Yeah,
least as far as we're concerned, like we hope that we're healthy. But to your point,
exactly.
like it's hard to it's not like a car where you can just like crack open the hood and see
Yeah,
what's going on. Like okay, or, is my liver okay? Is my stomach okay? Is my heart okay?
yeah.
There's so many things that obviously need to be working perfectly
Hmm.
to be able to, or at least close to perfect, to make sure that we're here
Yep.
still. But yeah, I think a lot of people kind of had that moment if they hadn't already with COVID.
Hmm.
Like that was a time when I think a lot of people realized like, whoa, like I could,
Yeah,
like this could affect me and
that's
my
so
life,
true.
right? And especially the older generations,
Mhm.
just naturally with the effects of it. I think a lot of people kind of had that moment where, well, one, you had the whole world like paused or
Mhm.
shut down, and for many people, myself included, like the layoffs, like that was another aspect, and
Yeah.
you kind of had to come to terms with, oh, like my identity isn't my job because I just lost my job and I'm still here. So
Yeah.
obviously, like my
Exactly.
identity is something besides that.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, there's the health scare, and then you're thinking like about the things that, especially with all the hustle and bustle and how busy, routine, and all these things, you don't really settle down and actually think like, whoa, like what if tomorrow,
Mhm.
something happens and
Yep.
I'm not here, or someone I love is not here, right?
Yeah.
That's when you start to like really slow down. You're like, whoa, like this is
Yeah.
really crazy.
It's scary, and
Hmm.
COVID too. Yeah, it just made me really appreciate life and like my loved ones. I'm
Hmm.
probably also a little bit of like a hypochondriac now, but a
Yeah,
little
there's
scared
like
of everything.
everything's got like a slow pendulum, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's totally like understandable, and I don't think it's crazy for you, like of you at all, to say that this maybe like I think I was on a podcast actually with Alonzo, kind of like a little smack in the head.
Hmm.
Like you kind of just appreciate things. You're like,
Oh
whoa,
yeah.
like there's color in the world, and like I really appreciate how
Yeah.
beautiful things are, or like the
Hmm.
food tastes really good, and like obviously, um, we hope that it doesn't require something like this to kind of wake
Yeah.
us up and like appreciate things. But I
It
mean,
did.
in a way, I'm sure it like made you come to terms with like, wow, like I really need to
Oh,
appreciate
totally.
everything.
Yeah, especially in college, you feel invincible. Like
Oh, for sure.
you're
Yeah.
partying, you're having the time of your life, you're probably doing some crazy
Your
things.
knees are great, like
Yeah,
you
I
have no
know.
shoulder
Yeah,
pain.
but I'm running, working out, everything's great, and yeah, then all of a sudden you realize something like your health can be taken away really at
Hmm.
any moment, which is terrifying. And um, yeah, it just made me realize that
Hmm.
like even just I was kind of like I couldn't walk after the surgery really
Hmm.
well. Like even just like being able to walk and run now. Like it's just like little things. It sounds I know a lot of people if they have a health scare, they feel this way, but you like appreciate the little things.
Oh, for sure. And how do you, I mean, of course, we talked about the lead up to finding out that you're gluten intolerant,
Hmm.
but now, of course, your life has changed,
Yeah.
to kind of have that be like a focal point now for your diet.
Yes.
How have you wrestled with that? And like, obviously incorporating in, do you find it inconvenience? Has it been easy?
Yeah. It's tricky. I would never wish this on anyone either. It's
Hmm.
especially as someone that I cannot eat gluten. It's not one thing like if I want to go eat a piece of bread and just deal with a tummy ache, like I can't do that.
Hmm.
I will get severely sick. It's not good
It's
for me.
serious.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
serious. It's not good for me to have any sort of gluten. The hardest thing I've struggled with is cross contamination.
Hmm.
Like eating out is really tricky for me sometimes. When I first was diagnosed gluten free, that's the biggest thing I struggled with was eating out. For example, like going out to eat and ordering some French fries. I would have never thought that French fries could have gluten in them and make me sick. I got sick from French fries all the time when I first was gluten free because I didn't understand it because they're potatoes. I'm like, they're potatoes, but
Hmm.
they're fried in something that they fry chicken in or
Right.
fried chicken and or breaded stuff or something like
Hmm.
that. So that makes me sick. So eating out is the biggest struggle for me. And every restaurant I go to, I'm always thinking about it. I could get sick today, and that makes me
Wow.
nervous.
Yeah.
And it's something that's always on my mind, unfortunately. But I've gotten really good about managing it. I really enjoy like cooking at home, and
Hmm.
I'm probably a little healthier now because I eat a lot at home because I know it's safe. I know it's not going to make me sick. I can't really eat any fast food, so
That's probably a good,
it's probably a good thing.
yeah.
It's probably a blessing. It's tricky, but I've definitely gotten really used to it. All our friends are
Hmm.
really great about it and understanding if we're going out to a restaurant. Usually everyone's really understanding if maybe I don't want to eat there or they suggest a different restaurant or anything like that. Like our friends are really great about that. Patrick's really great about that. Rachel is really, really, really good about it. She'll never suggest any place that like I can't eat at or something. And I never mind going to a restaurant and just like getting a drink or anything.
Hmm.
Um, So it's just been an adjustment, but I think now I'm confident enough to like if I'm going to a restaurant and I can't eat anything, I don't mind saying, "Oh, I'm not going to eat here.
Hmm.
I'm fine." Or if I want to try to eat there, I don't mind talking to the waiter or waitress and kind of explaining the situation. So I've gotten used to it, but it was an adjustment at first.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure from obviously prior to this, you could just order like whatever you want, I
Hmm.
imagine, and then now you have to one, like not only be conscious about where it is that, you know, you're going to end up going for food, but then
Yeah.
also knowing like, oh, I need to make sure to talk to the waiter
Yeah.
or the host or whoever it is to get that cleared.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I'm sure that also comes with like a different dynamic and just like approaching things differently, where you say like, well, at a certain point, I just need to be unapologetic. Like this is just reality, right?
Yeah.
Like
I can't do anything about
yeah,
it.
and it's not just a preference, right? Because I think some places will
Hmm.
ask if it's preference or.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, some restaurants are actually great about it. They'll ask if it's like a allergy or I just eat gluten free. I'm like, no, it's a severe,
Yeah.
severe.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of places are pretty good about it. It depends.
Yeah. And so then I guess just to clarify, because I just wanted to make sure. So this was completely unrelated to the mass.
Completely unrelated, which is the crazy thing. Like my stomach issues were not caused by my mass.
Mm.
It's a complete coincidence that
Mm.
I've had these stomach issues and it led me to having all these tests done and then they found a mass.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blessing that that
Yeah.
happened that way. But yeah, completely separate things. At
Yeah.
least from what I realize and
Right.
what I know and what my doctors told me.
Yeah. Call it what you will. I would
Yeah.
say yeah, blessing, providential, but yeah,
Yeah.
for some it's yeah. I mean, it's pretty crazy to think about when you like look
Hmm.
back. You're like, what are the odds that
Yep.
something like this
I've thought
would
about
happen?
it so many times too, because I mean, I mean, the timing was really funky, but I could have not gotten all the testing done. I could have realized, oh, I'm allergic to gluten. I'm going to stop eating gluten, which I did do that. But if the timing would have been a little different, I maybe wouldn't have gotten the ultrasound, or
Mm-hmm.
I maybe wouldn't have continued the testing and what ended up finding the mass. So it just the way like everything kind of fell into place. It worked out in my favor because I could have ruptured the
Mm-hmm.
mass. It definitely would have ruptured probably at some point
At some point, yeah.
if I didn't remove it. So
Wow.
yeah, it was just very coincidental, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to your point, like it can be good to think about these things, but also like it's also good to not over
Mhm.
like indulge in it and
Yeah.
just like only think about that because you also don't want to just fall in despair and just be like,
Yeah.
at a certain point, obviously we're very thankful that everything panned out the way that it did,
Hmm.
but at a certain point, you also need to say, not that you haven't, it seems like you've done well, but just saying, okay, like this is reality, like I just need to move on and like be really appreciative and like
Yeah.
thankful that this is the way things panned out
Yeah.
because you never
Exactly.
know how things could have gone.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess like switching gears a little bit,
Mhm.
something that I know I believe you used to do, I don't know that you still do now, which was vlogging.
Yeah.
I know that
This
was
is a
something,
happier topic.
yeah, this is something that you took on, what is this, during COVID? Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like maybe a year into it. Like it wasn't like right away.
Yeah. It was almost pretty much right away.
Oh, it
Kind
was.
of like I'm thinking about it because wait, I have a story for you. Now
Oh,
this
okay.
is all coming together because it was kind of around when Rachel and Jackie moved in together.
Okay.
And I mean, we were just going through it with COVID. I was really struggling with my job. Mental health was not great. I just
Mm.
like needed a creative outlet. And I love watching other vlogs or like even just like videos like this. Like I prefer
Mm-hmm.
podcasts on video, like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I love watching YouTube and things like that. And I was like, I would love to document my life. And I've always loved like taking pictures or taking videos. And I just needed something a little extra. And I'll always remember this. I went over and hung out with Rachel and Jackie. We were on the rooftop, and you were over.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe we were at a restaurant. No, we were on the rooftop for sure. And I think, I don't know how it got brought up, or maybe Jackie and I were talking about some YouTuber or
Because she had a
something.
camera. She had, I think, the same
Oh,
camera, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's how it came up, and maybe we were taking some pictures or something. Um, and I love that camera. And she definitely inspired me to buy that camera. But something you said to me is,
Mm.
Natalie, you should start a YouTube channel. You talk about it, or you talk about, I don't know exactly what you said, but
Hmm.
you specifically said that I should do it.
Oh,
And you
wow.
really encouraged me. Do you remember?
I remember when we were. I do recall the setting because yeah,
Yeah.
we used to hang out on the rooftop a
Hmm.
lot. But yeah, I do remember when Jackie brought the camera, and I remember
Yeah.
you were like taken by it. You were like, oh, like you were asking questions about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I recall like that specific sentence.
Well,
Yeah,
it maybe wasn't that specific
for
sentence,
sure.
but
Yeah,
you were like,
something along those lines. Yeah.
you were really encouraging about it. And I'll always remember it. And I think I went home that day and bought the camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great to see.
Like,
Yeah,
shout out to you and Jackie.
the impact. That's what we love to see.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and I wanted to ask like. What was the? I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but
Mhm.
what was the inspiration? Like, did you know that? Like, have you always had an interest in maybe doing a little bit of vlogging, or was that something that you
Um,
found like later on?
I think it just kind of just because I've always loved like taking pictures and videos. I feel like I'm always that person that like let's take
Mm.
a picture. Maybe people hate it a little bit, but I
No,
love to
I think
like
it's great.
document moments, and I think it's fun. So I just thought it would be fun to document my life a little bit, even though there was literally nothing going on because it was COVID. There was nothing exciting going on, but I just needed like something. I
Mhm,
needed something. I was on my computer all the time working, and I needed to be on my computer like doing something else or just like doing something else. So
mhm.
it kind of just happened, and it was fun, like just vlogging life. I really fell out of it recently for no reason, really, and I regret it a little bit. I like fell out of vlogging probably right before I got engaged, and I kind of wish I would have like vlogged my trip or
Through that,
something, or like vlog some of this wedding process, and maybe I will.
I
Maybe I'll come
encourage
back.
you
Yeah.
to. This will be the
I
next
know.
like
The
the
next
yeah the new
part two.
renewal. Yeah, I encourage you to
Yeah.
pick that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's. I think to your point, like it can be, especially in the moment, like people will be like, oh, like we need to take a picture or
Mhm.
whatever. But it's. I think everyone always appreciates it
Yeah,
after.
I think so too.
Um,
And I'm always that person that like I love looking back at pictures and videos,
hmm
and I love like sending people pictures. I love like
hmm
being that person. So,
Yeah, my mom has always been in our family. Like she's the one who
uh,
like has the idea to like take the picture, and obviously, for myself, I'll speak. Growing up, like it can be something like, oh, we have to take a picture, blah blah blah.
yeah.
But then obviously, we're so grateful then that we can look back and like look
Exactly.
back on the growth, and it's something that ties in family memories, and we were
Hmm.
here, we were there, and obviously we could track like how we grew and all that stuff, and it's really beautiful to be able to look back because
Yeah.
again, we're so thankful that we're here. You never know,
Hmm.
like what can happen. And Jackie
Yeah.
does something similar. Like she has her scrapbooks and she has a
Yeah.
little the Fujifilm with the it's kind of like the Kodak picture and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And
So
she's great about vlogging trips and stuff, which I really
she is.
admire. I feel like I was like the opposite. I get overwhelmed trying to vlog a trip, but she's
Hmm
really great about that. And that's something you love to have videos of,
hmm
you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. There's a memory aspect, and also just like I have a fonder appreciation of just physical things.
mhm.
It's obviously one thing to scroll through the pictures on our cameras, but I
Yeah.
think maybe it's just because of the age that we grew up in. I think there's something to say about, at least with my parents, like they had a lot of printed pictures of when we were kids,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
so nice to just
I
like,
love that.
yeah, just go through and like look at those pictures and have that appreciation of like, wow, it's so nice that I can see what I look like when I was a
Hmm.
little kid, or like
Yeah,
these silly things, these moments that, yeah, we won't get back,
I agree.
and that's what this podcast is for. I think it's
Yeah.
so nice that we can kind of look back on across
I
the
know.
decades in the future. I'll have you on
Exactly.
again.
Yeah. I
Um,
know. I love it.
so I know we are coming up on time.
Okay.
I'll ask you maybe like a more thoughtful question.
Okay. I'm nervous.
So I know, of course, the wedding is coming up next year,
Yeah.
and you're busy planning all of that, and there's a lot that goes into it.
Hmm.
But let's say after that, where do you see yourself in 3 years?
3 years. So what would that make me? Almost 30.
Mhm.
30. Oh gosh.
Where do you see yourself at 30? And of course, this is all like you can't control the future or
Yeah,
whatever, but what
exactly.
are you working towards, and like what do
Yeah,
you see yourself? Yeah, at that age.
that's a great. I'll hit maybe a few things. I would
Hmm
say career-wise, I really love what I'm doing, and I hope I continue on the path. Specifically, I was just talking to Jackie and some friends about this. I mostly do internal communications.
hmm
Um, and I want to continue on the internal communications path because you can go a lot of routes with communications. But I'm hoping to, eventually be like a manager.
Hmm.
Just continue on the path I'm kind of going. It's been, knock on wood, going pretty well.
The natural progression.
Yeah, I want that to continue. So career and be happy with my
Hmm.
job. Really want to be happy with my job. And then as far as my relationship, I feel like I see Pat and I probably still being close to Chicago.
Hmm.
At this point, I would be surprised if we're still downtown Chicago. I think at this point we may be in the suburbs, maybe, or like maybe over here, Wicker Park or Logan Square, but we're not downtown Chicago anymore, I don't think.
Hmm.
At that point, um, and hopefully traveling. I really want to start traveling with Pat. I feel like COVID really put a pause on that for a lot of us.
Domestic, international, both.
Both for sure.
'Cause I know
Yeah.
you were in Spain for a while.
Yeah, yeah. And I really want to do that with Pat. We haven't really traveled internationally at all. So I
Mhm.
hope that we can kind of do that in the next few years, and really prioritize that and do all that before possibly having children if we're blessed enough to have children.
Hmm.
That could be maybe something in, I don't think we'll have a baby in the next 3 years, but we'll definitely be closer to it,
Hmm.
hopefully at that point. If we're blessed to have children,
Right.
I
Yep.
think we'll be talking about it more then, and probably like a little bit more ready, and hopefully have a home together, a bigger home than we have now, not the one bedroom apartment.
Right.
And yeah, and I hope all of our friends stay close to Chicago too. And
Hmm.
like I feel like we have such a good friend group here, and I want to continue, hanging out together and growing together. It's been really fun, like seeing all of our life moments happen and like you guys getting married. And I'm sure you guys will maybe have children in the future. And like, I feel like some of our other friends will start getting married. And I'm
Hmm.
excited for all of our like life moments to happen and be like a part of them and nearby and prioritizing that and also prioritizing time with family.
Yeah, it's definitely wedding season.
Yeah, it's wedding
Where I
season.
think that's something Jackie and I maybe without knowing we kind of kicked off a little bit
Oh,
because I
for
think
sure.
now we've had I think we have 6 weddings this
Oh
year.
my gosh, yeah. Yeah,
And
you guys were
there's
the first.
yeah, there's definitely going to be more to come. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, just being a part of everyone's like big life moments, right? Like
Hmm.
this is such a
So
pivotal
fun.
moment for everyone, and obviously that comes with a lot of travel and
Hmm.
having to plan and like coordinate things. But it's all such a great feeling,
Yeah,
right? It's for such
totally.
it's for the best reason. Seeing everyone come together and make that commitment, and of course, congratulations to you
Thank
that
you.
it goes wonderfully. That of course, as Jackie mentioned in her podcast, at the end of the day, as long as you say I do,
Yes, that's
it's
true.
it's easy to get like swept up in like this has to go this way or that way or it
Hmm.
needs to be perfect or what have you. But
Yeah.
I
I,
think something Jackie and I ultimately realized was, as long as we were able to enjoy the moment and like realize that, whatever it is we're not going to be able to coordinate everything to perfection.
no, things
Um,
are gonna happen too.
yeah, then you'll enjoy it, I'm sure, and it'll be
Yeah.
something that you'll look back fondly. So,
Oh, of course.
all right, well, I think that concludes our last episode. Unless you have anything else that you want to add, any shout outs or anything like that?
I don't think so. Just thanks for having me. This was so
Yeah, of course.
fun.
I'm
I
so glad I
loved
could have
it.
you on.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe next time I have you on, you'll be Mrs. O'Keefe.
Maybe.
So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. This was, let me make sure, yes, the 7th episode. Joined
Wow.
with Natalie, of course. Thank you for joining us, and hope to have you on for the next episode.
Absolutely. Thanks, Danny.
All right. Ciao.